At my parents' will reading, my brother inherited millions, and I got a single painting. I thought it was an insult, until I discovered it would destroy everything he built. The morning of my parents' will reading arrived cold and bright, with sunlight pouring through Harold and Associates law offices' mahogany-paneled windows. I sat silently in the corner and watched my brother Mark, dressed in a fitted suit, go around the room as if he already owned everything. If I were being honest with myself, I would say he did. The lawyer's voice interrupted my thoughts. Miss Elena Carter, are you ready to proceed? Grasping the arms of my leather chair, I nodded. I already had a fairly decent notion of what my parents thought of me, but at 30, I was about to find out. That had been painfully obvious from the numerous parallels to Nathan throughout our lives. Mr. Harold started reading after adjusting his wire-rimmed spectacles. He continued by listing assets that left my head spinning, including our Hamptons summer home, the family estate in Vermont, controlling shares in Bennett Industries, and a portfolio valued at millions of dollars. To our son Nathan for his unfailing dedication to the family business and maintaining the Bennett legacy. With each thing, Nathan's grin got bigger. Next was my turn. Mr. Harold paused and shuffled his papers before saying, to our daughter Elena, we left the painting Autumn Twilight, currently hanging in the study of our main residence. There was silence in the room. Nathan laughed without even trying to hide it. I managed to ask, my voice just above a whisper, a painting. Just a painting. It was your mother's favorite, Mr. Harold said feebly, obviously uneasy by the difference. Nathan approached and put his hand on my shoulder, holding it just firmly enough to cause pain. Don't worry, sis. I'll make sure you get a good job in the company. Maybe in the mailroom. I dismissed his hand with a shrug and got up. My brother now had the entire Bennett family fortune, which had been accumulated over 3 generations. My mother had purchased a single artwork from a small gallery years prior, and that was all I owned. It wasn't exactly a fair inheritance, but I had always found it to be lovely, an image of a forest at nightfall with odd geometric patterns tucked away amid the trees. I said, is that all? To Mr. Harold. With empathy, he nodded. The painting must be collected within 5 days. I ignored Nathan's cries behind me and walked away without saying anything else. It was unreal to drive to my parents' house, which is now Nathan's. When I told the guards about the picture, they gave me skeptical looks, but allowed me to pass. Agnes, the housekeeper, was crying when she saw me inside. Oh, Miss Elena, she said softly as she gave me a strong hug. It's not right what they did to you. I fought back tears as I gave her a hug in return. There were times when Agnes felt more like a mother to me than my own mother. She delicately wrapped the picture in a blanket and assisted me in removing it from the study wall. Your mother used to stare at this for hours, Agnes remarked gently, especially in the last few months. Sometimes she'd mutter about numbers and patterns. We thought the illness was making her confused. I took a closer look at the painting. The geometric shapes appeared to move and transform in the study's warning light, forming patterns I had never seen before. Numbers? Agnes gave a nod. She repeatedly sketched the shapes with her fingertips. It would make Mr. Bennett furious. I placed the painting on the wall of my living room that evening at my tiny apartment across town. It was lovely in its own right. With amazing detail, every leaf and branch of the forest scene was painted. However, the natural aspects didn't completely mesh with those geometric shapes. They appeared almost purposeful, as if they were attempting to communicate with me. My mother gave me the picture as a parting gift, and I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my couch, gazing at it. Was it merely a mean joke? One more reminder that Nathan is far better than me. Or was it something else? It buzzed on my phone. Calling again, Nathan. Like I did with his other 5 calls, I disregarded it. Most likely he wanted to gloat more, or offer me the job in the mailroom instead. I launched my laptop and began reading up on the picture, Autumn Twilight, by James Morrison. No significant exhibitions. No records of auctions. hardly any presence on the internet. My mother purchased it from a gallery that had long since shuttered. The painting seemed to have materialized out of thin air. Nathan's SMS message appeared. "Don't be bitter, sis. Come work for me. It's what Mom and Dad would have wanted." I gave a snort. Instead of following my interest for art history and restoration, my parents had hoped that I would become more like Nathan and be concerned with profit margins and shareholders. They had expressed their feelings rather clearly after I let them down by going my own way. However, I couldn't help but notice something about the painting. I was reminded of what I had learned about in my art restoration classes by those shapes. Steganography is the art of concealing messages from view. I stood up and took a closer look at the painting. If you weren't searching for it, you wouldn't notice the geometric shapes, subtle color differences from the rest of the landscape. They also appeared to follow a pattern. I jumped when I heard a knock on my door. It was past midnight. Who is going to be here at this hour? I could see Nathan standing there through the peephole, his normally flawless hair in a messy state. "Elena," he exclaimed, "open up. We need to talk about the painting." I watched him through the peephole and said nothing. He had never before expressed any interest in art. Why had he come here now, at this hour of the night, to inquire about a picture that was reportedly worthless? "Elena, please," he said with a desperate tone I had never heard in his voice. "Mom left instructions about the painting. You need to get it back." Instructions? My pulse began to race. Perhaps I wasn't insane. Perhaps their geometric shapes did conceal something. I yelled, "Go away, Nathan," through the door. "The painting is mine. It's all I got, remember." "You don't understand," he growled. "That painting, it's not what you think. Give it to me now, and I'll give you $8 million. $5 million. For an artwork that only hours before had made him laugh. Mind racing, I retreated from the door. Despite his various facets, Nathan was not a financial fool. The painting must have been worth much more if he was making that deal. He was fumbling with something, and I heard it. Keys. Did he still possess a duplicate of my extra key from last year's illness? Just as I heard my front door open, I snatched the picture from the wall and hurried to my bedroom, closing the door behind me. Nathan called out, "Elena!" "In my apartment. Where are you? Where's the painting?" My hands trembled as I held the painting close. Those geometric designs appeared to glimmer softly in my bedroom's dim light, and then I noticed it, a trend I had previously overlooked. There was no chance in the shapes. If you didn't know what to look for, you wouldn't discover them because they were so deftly concealed in the forest environment. "Elena," Nathan said as he approached, "think about what you're doing. That painting is worth more than you can imagine." I flipped the artwork over and looked at the back. Although the original painting was expertly mounted, there was a little gap in the framing that seemed strange. The handle on my bedroom door shook. "Elena, open this door right now." I pried at the opening in the frame with shaky fingertips. A tiny piece of paper, with my mother's exquisite calligraphy on it, fluttered out. My breath seized in my throat as I read the opening line. "Elena, my love, you found out what I always suspected you would if you're reading this. You notice patterns that others overlook. You wonder what other people accept. You're going to learn why your brother and father have always been so terrified of you, my sweetheart." I could hardly hear the increasing hammering on my bedroom door. My hands were shaking as I read my mother's letter, but I was too preoccupied to notice that every word contained a truth that would alter everything. The numbers in the picture were more than simply arbitrary forms. They were accounts, passwords, and coordinates to something that would rock Bennett Industries to its core. My brother, who was still yelling outside my door, was unaware that his idyllic world was about to fall apart. While Nathan continued his diatribe outside, I sat on the floor of my bedroom for an indeterminate amount of time, reading and rereading my mother's letter. I shivered as I took in every meticulously composed phrase. You can discover the truth about Bennett Industries by combining the access codes I've provided here with the numbers in the picture. Patents and designs that were stolen from bright minds who trusted them were the foundation of your father and brother's empire. Elena, I was one of those people, and my heir was always supposed to be you, my darling daughter. I was startled back to reality by a loud bang coming from the living room. Apparently, Nathan had grown weary of politely asking. I yelled, "I'm calling the police," and had already dialed 911. In response, Nathan said, "Go ahead. I'll tell them you stole company property. That painting belongs to Bennett Industries." But now I know better. The letter clarified everything, even how my mother had concealed her work for years, despite being a talented innovator in her own right. The painting was a key to a secret database of evidence, not merely a work of art. You may find my private laboratory using the coordinates. The letter went on. It has everything you need. But Alina, watch out. Both your brother and father will stop at nothing to conceal their secrets. Nathan's footsteps backed away, and then I heard my front door slam. I took a big breath and came out of my bedroom. I had a messy apartment. It seems that Nathan had looked everywhere for the painting, but I had stuff to do, so I didn't give a damn about the mayhem. I started by taking pictures of the entire painting, catching the geometric designs from every possible viewpoint. After that, I meticulously copied down my mother's letter's coordinates. She instructed me to reveal the entire set of access codes by overlaying the shapes in a particular order. Our former cleaner Agnes texted me as my phone buzzed once more. "Miss Elena, all of your mother's belongings are being removed from the house by men. They are searching her study for something. Please exercise caution." The evidence was being destroyed. I had to hurry. A place in the Berkshires, almost 3 hours away from the city, was found using the coordinates. In order to conceal it from my father and brother, my mother had written that she had bought the property in her maiden name. The laboratory is located underneath. Her letter clarified. It appears to be an old storm cellar at the entrance. Nevertheless, it has cutting-edge security. To get in, use the painting's initial number sequence. I hurriedly packed my laptop, my mother's letter, some clothes, and the picture that was carefully wrapped in blankets. I saw a black SUV parked across the street, with its engine running, as I was making my way to my car. Nathan had not finished yet. It was an anxious drive to the Berkshires. For the first hour, the SUV kept a steady distance from me. I eventually lost them, somewhere around the Massachusetts border, after trying every possible detour and back route. It was almost daybreak when I arrived at the coordinates. At first glance, the property appeared deserted, just an overgrown field with a dilapidated farmhouse. However, I became aware of my mother's brilliance when I strolled around the grounds and contrasted the geometric shapes in the painting with the surrounding scenery. There was more to the shapes than numbers. They were a map. The artwork was well complemented by the seemingly haphazard patterns of the rocks and trees. The picture pointed directly to the storm cellar. When I entered the first sequence into a concealed keypad, its rusted doors, which appeared to have been closed for decades, swung open effortlessly to show a staircase that descended into darkness. As I descended, motion-activated lights flickered on. With every step, the warmth decreased, and I could hear the quiet hum of ventilation systems. Another keypad waited at the bottom. I had to use the painting's second sequence this time. I was astounded by the laboratory that appeared out of the shadows. With its immaculate white walls, cutting-edge machinery, and rows of computers humming softly, it was like entering a foreign planet. However, the wall of prototypes and patents, dozens of inventions I recognized from Bennett Industries products, was what attracted my attention. They all had my mother's original signature, though, which was a significant distinction. "Oh my God," I muttered as I approached to look at them. These were the originals, not merely copies of Bennett Industries technology. My mother had not merely watched the business from a distance. Its secret genius had been her. My blood ran cold when I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Impressive, isn't it?" My father was standing in the doorway, exactly as he had been on the day of his death, when I turned around, or the day we believed he had passed away. Nathan was standing next to him, grinning contentedly. As he entered the lab, my father questioned, "Did you really think your mother was the only one who knew about this place?" Though I must admit, hiding the coordinates in that painting was clever. We've been searching for this facility for months. I took my mother's letter and retreated. "You're supposed to be dead." Though it didn't reach his eyes, he grinned. Sometimes the best way to find something is to make people stop looking for it. Your mother's death was unfortunately real. But mine, well, let's just say it served its purpose. The reading of the will was a trap, I recognized. You wanted me to find the painting. Nathan stated, "We needed you to lead us here," as he stepped forward to block the escape. Mom changed all the security protocols before she died. We couldn't get in without the codes. "And now," my dad said, carefully moving forward, "you're going to help us destroy everything in this lab. All evidence of your mother's work will disappear, and Bennett Industries' patents will remain secure." However, they had committed a critical error. I had been retreating toward my mother's main desk during their conversation. The clarity plan, as she termed it, was activated by a series of numbers that she had indicated in her letter as an emergency plan. "Actually," I replied, extending my arm to enter the sequence, "I don't think I will." The lights in the lab abruptly changed to a pulsating red, and a voice on a computer said, "Clarity protocol activated, broadcasting evidence to all major news outlets and regulatory agencies. Deletion impossible." Anger twisted my father's face. "What have you done?" With every word I said, I felt stronger. "Mom called it her insurance policy," I continued. "Every piece of evidence in this lab has just been transmitted to hundreds of secure locations. Patents, proof of theft, fraudulent documents, everything. Bennett Industries is about to face some very uncomfortable questions." Nathan made a sudden lunge, but it was too late. All entrances were sealed as the lab's security systems triggered and alarms started to sound. Together, we were imprisoned by the knowledge that would bring down their dominion. "She knew," I added, observing their pallor. "She knew you would try to bury her contributions, just like you buried her innovations. So she made sure the truth would come out, one way or another." I could see police lights coming through the little windows of the lab. Local authorities had been notified by someone, most likely the lab's security system. The sound of sirens approached, and my father and Nathan exchanged frantic glances. By the door, still covered with blankets, was the picture that had begun it all. I had come to the right place, thanks to those seemingly useless geometric shapes. Justice, not simply a painting, was my mother's parting present. And knowing that this was only the beginning, I grinned as I saw my father and brother realize their idyllic world was falling apart. Bennett Industries' true tale was about to be revealed, and nobody would be able to conceal the facts this time. The following 36 hours were a haze of news stories, police pronouncements, and corporate mayhem. From my hotel room, I watched as years of meticulously crafted lies came to light in real time, and Bennett Industries' stock fell precipitously. Bennett IN CEO found alive, arrested for fraud. Corporate giant built on stolen patents. Mother's revenge, the hidden genius behind Bennett Tech. The headlines shouted out loud. Since the story emerged, my phone has been ringing non-stop, from reporters, attorneys, and former workers. Everyone was interested in hearing my version of events. Agnes, our former housekeeper, had more insights to offer, but that was the only call I was interested in. She informed me, "Your mother knew this day would come," in an emotional voice. "That's why she made me promise to give you this after the truth came out." Another letter from my mother was in my hand as I sat in Agnes's tiny living room an hour later. This one was distinctive. Instead of directions or instructions, it was a narrative. Her tale. "Elena, my love, it's time to comprehend your own past now that you are aware of Bennett Industries' reality. Your brother was always superior to you. Something more was always intended for you. The details of my life gradually came into clarity as I read. My mother had been playing a long game, setting me up for this moment from the start, and she hadn't just been another casualty of my father's plans. Contrary to what my father had said, the art history classes I had taken were worthwhile. They had taught me to recognize patterns and decipher meanings that are concealed from view. I had learned patience, accuracy, and how to piece together truth from pieces from my job in restoration. Each time your dad pushed you out of the company, each time he gave preference to Nathan, he was unwittingly assisting in getting you ready for this. Right now, you developed a new way of thinking that allowed you to notice what others overlooked. You were learning to reveal the lies, while Nathan was learning to keep them up. I was reading when Agnes's door was knocked on. Outside, a woman carrying a briefcase was dressed in a sharp suit. "Miss Bennett, I'm Vanessa Quinn from the SEC. We need to discuss your mother's patents." The hours that followed served as a crash course on the extent of my mother's preparations. She had continued to invent while working covertly in her underground lab, not only documenting the stolen patents. The coordinates of the artwork have produced ideas that might revolutionize the sector, in addition to proof of previous theft. Alexandra laid documents across Agnes's coffee table and stated, "Your mother filed these patents under a trust that names you as the sole beneficiary." As I studied the documents, my hands shook. I currently own dozens of patents that are all protected by law, not just the outdated inventions that my father had pilfered, but also several that were years ahead of the curve. Alexandra went on to say, "Bennett Industries owes you more than just compensation for the stolen patents. They've built their entire infrastructure around your mother's technology. They can't operate without it." Even though I was starting to get it, I still wondered, so what does that mean? "It means, Miss Bennett, that you now effectively control the company that cast you aside." The following morning, I entered Bennett Industries' offices as its new owner, rather than the forgotten daughter, while my father and Nathan sat in jail awaiting trial. The board of directors was forced to agree to my requirements because they were desperate to keep the business from going out of business. Another surprise I discovered when standing in my father's old office was a wall safe concealed beneath the artwork that had previously hung there. The last set of numerals from my mother's painting is the combination. There was a personal journal inside that detailed all the inventions he had stolen and betrayed. More significantly, though, it included a list of names, people who, like my mother, had been denied the respect that they deserved. A month later, I announced the company's new strategy while standing on stage at a hurriedly called news conference. I said, "Bennett Industries was built on stolen dreams," to the gathered audience. "Today, we begin making things right. We're establishing a foundation to compensate every inventor who was wronged by the previous management. But more than that, we're transforming the company into what it should have been all along, an incubator for innovation, where brilliant minds are celebrated, not exploited." My new workplace now has the painting that began it all, serving as a reminder that sometimes the most valuable things are hidden in plain sight. The pattern of a brighter future is now symbolized by the geometric shapes that formerly hid my mother's secret, one based on truth rather than falsehoods. Nathan alternated between threats and requests for assistance in his letters to me while inside. I returned one picture, the painting, which is currently hanging in the identical spot where our father's image had stood. He'd get the message. His deceitful world has ended. My father remained silent, but it was no longer relevant. His legacy now consisted of the truth he had battled so hard to conceal. The great Richard Carter would be remembered as a thief who stole his own wife's genius, rather than as a visionary businessman. Agnes handed me one last letter from my mother, late one evening, as I was getting ready to leave the office. This one had arrived precisely 2 months following the start of the company's turnaround. "Elena, my dear, you've done more than just reveal the truth, if you're reading this. From the ashes of dishonesty, You've started to rebuild. You should never inherit a corrupt empire, in my opinion. I wanted you to have the opportunity to create something sincere and heartfelt. I felt more connected to her than ever as I ran my fingertips over her handwriting. The painting, once thought useless, held the key to everything. The secret to everything was there. Furthermore, it had been my mother's method of demonstrating to me that I had inherited something far more priceless than wealth or prestige. Her idea of a better world had been passed on to me. After 18 months, Bennett Industries, which has since changed its name to Aurora Innovations, is entirely different from what it was. We are now a leader in both technology and moral business conduct. Numerous new careers have been started by our incubator program, and the organization has assisted scores of inventors in recovering their stolen inventions. The geometric shapes of the picture are now a familiar comfort, and it still hangs in my office. Late at night, I sometimes think they move a little, as though my mother is still there, giving me new patterns to follow and truths to learn. But like those figures, the most significant truth was always there, but it was concealed from view. Success based on deception will never last. However, success based on fairness and truth will endure. Last week, Nathan got freed from prison. He messaged me, requesting a meeting to discuss reestablishing our family. I still haven't replied. I've discovered that some designs are better kept unaltered. Rather, I dedicate my time to contemplating the future. Young inventors can display their ideas at the company's annual innovation fair without worrying about them being stolen. The young woman who won last year reminded me of my mother in that she was bright, underappreciated, and firm in her vision. I noticed my mother's painting mirrored in the glass trophy as I presented her with the honor. I was reminded that often the greatest inheritances aren't the ones we can physically carry, but rather the ones that change us from the inside out by the way the geometric shapes appeared to dance with approval. I had gained something invaluable from the useless painting: knowledge of my past, power over my future, and most crucially, the opportunity to make sure that no other bright mind would ever be stifled or taken from me again. I am certain that my mother would be more proud of that than she would be of any wealth. And in the end, Elena didn't just win, she healed. Because the greatest revenge isn't destruction, it's growth, truth, and reclaiming your power with grace. If you've ever faced betrayal, remember, you can choose peace over chaos, boundaries over bitterness, and purpose over pain. Sometimes the quietest victories echo the loudest. Have you ever turned your own heartbreak into strength? Share your story in the comments. I'd love to hear how you rose above it. Because healing isn't just possible, it's powerful. What would your version of autumn twilight reveal?